Hi there, my name is Angela, and I was born in a small house in the kingdom of 𝗕𝗘𝗑𝗓. My dad worked at the local mill and my mom stayed home growing flowers that she would later go and sell. I also had a little sister named 𝗕𝗘𝗏, who was totally adorable. Things had always been rough for us and we barely scraped by, but we were always there for each other. I didn't mind it when I was a child, but as I grew older, I began to notice stuff. Like one day, my mom made us dolls made out of cloth. My sister was thrilled while I was there pouting.
Angela, what's wrong, honey? Don't you like it?
Daisy has better ones. They're such tiny China dolls, Mom, and so pretty. Her parents are the best.
Honey, Daisy's dad works as a horseman for the king. We could never afford those. But the best thing about these are that they'll never break.
Eventually, my parents coaxed me out of it, and I also understood that it couldn't be helped. When I was 16, one day I was walking home near the town square when I saw that there was a crowd of people trying to watch something. I was tall, but there were so many people that it was difficult to see. I tried to jump to see over their heads. No luck. I found a barrel of wine near a cart and I climbed over it, finally managing to see a fancy carriage, unlike anything that I had ever seen before. It was something out of those fairy tale books, like that carriage made out of a magical pumpkin in Cinderella. There was a girl around my age looking around and waving at the crowd. Who is that?
You don't know? That there is the Princess of Ethiopia.
What's she doing here?
Why, visiting the village, of course.
I was stunned by her appearance. I had never seen such a luxurious-looking gown. Her tiara was the shiniest thing that I had ever seen. Everyone was showering her with praises. She looked so good that I was jealous. I wanted what she had. I went home with the images of the princess fresh in my brain. Mom, my gown is old and patched up and my shoes are worn. Can I get new ones?
Of course, Angela. I'll get them tomorrow.
Can I get better ones this time? Like the ones that the princess wears?
I'm afraid we can't get you those, as they cost more than a year of our earnings.
I was super mad. How come some people had everything they wanted in the world and others had almost nothing? It's not fair. I ran to my room, tears streaming down my cheeks. I wished I had been born at the palace. Then I would have all the jewels and gowns in the world.
Big sister, what's the matter?
I hurriedly wiped my tears away and smiled at 𝗕𝗘𝗏, but she had already seen them. Nothing, I'm fine.
Are you crying because Mom won't get you pretty things?
She had probably heard our conversation earlier. It's not Mom's fault, and hey, isn't it past your bedtime? I dreamt I was sinking into inferno, except the feeling was all too real. I opened my eyes. I was in someone else's bed, and the mattress was so thick I was actually sinking deeper into it with every second. I sat up and my eyes widened. Where was I? Why was I in this room? Had I been kidnapped? My wonder got the better of my panic as I was stunned to see the luxuries around me. I was in this huge room with marble flooring and tapestries on the walls. Suddenly, the doors burst open and I armed myself with whatever I could use as a weapon, which in this case was a stick beside the fireplace. They looked like servants, and they came to me asking,
Your Highness, what would you like to have for breakfast?
Your Highness? When did that happen? I ran to the mirror in the room and looked at my reflection. I looked exactly like the princess that I had seen yesterday. What was going on? I was panicking again. No. This can't be happening. I didn't ask for this.
Your Highness, are you quite well?
I am not the... As confused as I wasn't about to let this chance go and tell them that I wasn't the princess. So I kept my mouth shut. I was served breakfast. No, it wasn't breakfast. It was a whole feast. Breakfast? In bed? Really?
As usual.
Oops, he looked way too suspicious for my comfort. After that, I raided the princess's wardrobe, trying out all the gowns, shoes, and jewels one after another. It felt wrong going through someone else's things, but technically, I was the princess now, and they were mine. I could finally have everything in the world. While I was doing that, a servant approached me.
Your Highness, it's almost time for your lessons to begin.
What lessons?
What do you mean?
Yes, of course, the lessons. I definitely know what you're talking about. The servant looked at me strangely, then left. I wiped my brow. That was close. I'd been thinking that her life was all play and no work, but it now seemed that I might have been wrong. I followed the servant into a room with several tutors. The king was there as well. I could tell because he had a big crown on his head.
Come now, let's show your father that posture we've been working on. I told him how excellently you've been doing and he wanted to see.
One of the tutors came up ahead and placed a whole stack of books right on my head. I didn't even know what to do.
Go on, walk.
I walked slowly, very carefully, so that the books wouldn't fall. But of course, they did. Right after I had taken 2 steps, they toppled to the ground. I looked at them fearfully.
Maybe she's just nervous because you are watching, Your Majesty. Let's give her another chance.
She placed the books on my head once more, and they fell over again, and again, and again. The king looked at me with disappointment in his eyes.
You are a disgrace to the family. I can't even look at you.
And he left the room with his advisors. I had never felt more insulted. Over the next few days, I failed at everything I did. I fell so many times while horse riding that my body was covered in bruises. I couldn't dance. I couldn't even curtsy properly. People began to notice the odd behavior, and there were whispers everywhere I went. Even the servants were whispering about me.
And that there is their heir to the throne. Princess, I could do a better job than her. So improper. No etiquettes at all. It's as if she was raised in a barn with animals.
Everyone was talking behind my back. Word spread that the Princess of 𝗕𝗚𝗪 doesn't know the first thing about being a proper princess. I wonder what will happen to the kingdom. Oh my God. I was sick of it. In 1 week, I had had my fill. All the luxuries did not compensate for the trouble and mockery I was going through. I missed my family. They had always been nice to me and had never made me feel bad about myself, unlike the mean king. So I decided to go back. I went to my village cottage, very excited to see my parents after so long. What I saw next blew my mind. I stood there at the window, my jaw hanging open as I saw myself staring back at me. She was seated at the dinner table while my parents, dressed as servants, served me. Or rather, someone who looked like me with all sorts of things that they had never given me. The girl who had stolen my body looked up and saw me. She grinned evilly. Suddenly, she turned to my parents.
Why do these crumpets have so much butter on them? I told you to put less butter. Look at them! They're pooling!
Angela, don't be angry. I'll make new ones right now.
It was my mom. I couldn't believe that she was being treated this way by her. I had a hunch that it was the princess. She then turned to my father.
Did you bring it?
Of course, only the best for my baby girl.
He showed her a dress, which was obviously no match for what the princess wore, but it was still expensive and way better than anything that he had ever gotten me. What the heck? How had she manipulated them into doing this for her?
Don't you know I hate pink? I can't wear this! Go and change it!
Okay, don't get angry. It's not healthy. I'll go and have this changed right now. Don't worry.
What on earth? I had been nice and kind to them all my life, and they had never done nice things for me. And here she was being all rude and mean to them, and they rewarded her like she was the best daughter. I was so mad, I almost barged in. When both my parents were gone to get her the things that she asked for, she turned to Philippa.
What you got there? Can I see?
Philippa handed her the doll that Mom had made for us all those years ago. She couldn't even sleep without it. She took the doll from her and tore it completely.
This is trash. You're too old to play with this. Now shoot!
That was it. The last straw. She had tested my patience. Who did she think she was? Bullying my little sister? I barged inside. What do you think you're doing?
I'm doing what you did. Stealing your life.
I didn't do anything. I don't know what happened.
Like I would believe you. You're obviously a little witch. I am going to ruin your life.
I was angry at her, but I was also angry at my parents. Why were they being so nice to her? Why did they allow her to bully Philippa? I opened my mouth to threaten her with my new status as the princess, but right at that moment, the carriage horseman showed up.
Your Highness, the king wants you to be at the castle in time for the royal ball.
I looked at her. I'll be back. But my heart sank at the mention of another ball. More people to mock me whenever I tripped while dancing. More whispers behind my back. I was so nervous about the evening, I stood at the side without partaking in the dance.
Your Highness, the king requests for your presence.
I looked at the servant. Now?
Yes, Your Highness.
I hurriedly made my way towards him, which was a big mistake on my part. I tripped badly and was about to fall face first on the floor when an arm grabbed me by the wrist, and I stared up into the most gorgeous eyes I had ever seen. I was completely mesmerized.
Are you okay?
I broke out of my daze and blushed. I'm fine. Thanks for catching me.
Not a problem.
Then I went on my way. I found out that he was the prince from the neighboring kingdom, and his name was Charles. I could swear his eyes were on me the entire evening. After a while, I saw him coming towards me. My heart had never beat this fast in all my life.
Would you care for a dance?
And even though I was scared to, in fear that I might trip, I said yes. I had never been so taken by a boy before. As we danced, I stepped on his toes several times, but he didn't point it out, which was so nice of him. Sorry, I'm not much of a dancer. We didn't really have any balls back in the village.
Pardon me?
I cursed under my breath. I couldn't slip up like that again. Do you like to dance?
Not very much so. I would pick archery or horse riding over dancing any day.
We talked, and danced and drank punch, and danced again. This was the best evening since I'd arrived at the palace. After that, we began to see each other regularly. We would go on these long romantic walks, holding hands. I was falling in love with him. He was so kind, even to the servants. Unlike most of the royals I had been around. Things were going great. One day, Charles showed up with flowers and looked into my eyes.
I'm falling in love with you, Anastasia.
Oh, Anastasia. I felt sick at the pit of my stomach. He wasn't in love with me. He was in love with her.
She is not Princess Anastasia!
Came a booming voice, and there she was, her in my body. How had she gotten here?
She is nothing but a fraud, a liar, and a cheat!
She pointed at me and then looked at Charles.
You're in love with me, not her!
Hey, shut up! I yelled, but she pounced at me. Thank goodness Charles was there to shield me behind him. The guards arrived and dragged her away. She was still screaming and struggling as they did so.
Are you all right?
I'm fine.
What a clown.
I had had enough. I was sick of living a lie and pretending to be someone else. So I decided to come clean. She was telling the truth. I'm not the princess. I'm just a common village girl. My name is Angela.
What do you mean by that?
Charles was confused. So I told him everything. I knew he would hate me for lying and pretending. I knew he would never love a commoner like me. With tears in my eyes, I ran to the royal bedchambers. I had fooled Charles into loving me. I was pure evil. I wished I could turn back time somehow. The next morning, I woke up with pain in my back. I looked around me and realized that I was in my old bed at the village. How did this happen? Did the spell get reversed somehow? There was someone crouching by my bedside. Someone who looked scary with a hood over their head.
I am sorry. I have to bring you back.
Who are you? They took off their hood, and I was shocked to see that it was none other than my sister Philippa. You did this? But how? She put a finger over her lips, gesturing for me to stay.
Shh. It was because you were crying that day. You needed to see the other side of the picture, too.
I didn't know what or who my little sister was, but she had indeed taught me an important lesson. Mom, Dad, it's me. I'm back.
Angela, what's wrong? What do you need?
They all came running into the room, and I giggled as I pulled them all into a big family hug. Nothing, I'm just happy to be here. My family breathed a sigh of relief, having me back to my normal self once again. It turned out that Princess Anastasia had been acting crazy. The village doctor had advised them to let her have her way. I happily settled down into my old life once again. One day, I was picking flowers to sell later when I looked up to see Prince Charles. What are you doing here? How did you find me?
That's not important. I want you to come back home with me. I returned today.
But don't you love Anastasia?
If I loved her, I wouldn't be standing here right now, would I? I always knew you weren't Anastasia. I have known her for years.
I was shocked. He had known all along? So you don't love her?
No, I love you. Come home with me.
I can't. My family's here. I refused. So he promised to come back when we were a little older. And he actually did. We are married now and even have an adorable baby. I actually became a real princess. The best thing about it all is that my family moved into his palace with me as well. But what I will never know is how my little sister pulled that off.
When I realized that I couldn't get out, I felt really scared. I was in a laboratory, and the only door was locked. I pounded on my fists and called out for help, but no one came. A lump rose to my throat. I was such a fool! What was gonna happen to me now? I sank into a chair and put my head in my hands. You? Hi, I'm Roxy. I never liked studying much. Hanging out with my friends and shopping was much more interesting. I was quite pretty and always had a lot of admirers. One of them was the class rep, Sam. I often used that nerd's infatuation with me to get better marks. But it seemed I'd run out of luck as I failed another biology test. If you fail tomorrow's lab, you'll be in big trouble. I really was going to prepare, but my friends invited me to a party. So I came home late and I didn't learn anything. In the morning, I barely made myself get up and go downstairs. While I was having breakfast, there was news on the TV. Yesterday, a group of students and a college professor went missing in the mountains. Roxy, you came home in the middle of the night. Again, you should have been studying. Mom, if this keeps up, I'm taking away your pocket money. The threat worked. There was gonna be a cool summer collection on sale soon. I couldn't miss it. My mood plummeted. I knew I was gonna fail the lab. They would call Mom to the school, and then I'd have to wave my pocket money goodbye. But then something unexpected happened. When I walked into the biology classroom, a man I didn't recognize was sitting at the teacher's desk. He looked young and pretty handsome. When everyone was finally seated, he introduced himself. Hi, I'm Mr. Collins, your new biology teacher. Wow, we were so lucky. All the girls immediately started giggling and looking at him with interest. Sam got up from his seat. I'm the class rep. We're supposed to be working in the lab today. I wanted to hit him. What an idiot. Why would he say that? Change of plans. I have special teaching methods. So from this day on, there's gonna be new rules. No textbooks and no cramming. Only practical classes. Everyone was pleasantly surprised. Sam was the only one who looked annoyed. Now, let's do an experiment. Does anyone want to assist me? Several people raised their hands, but for some reason, Mr. Collins chose me. I was in trouble again. But it turned out I was worried for nothing. Mr. Collins demonstrated an experiment with plants. He gave me special gloves and he asked me to hold them. Well done. You're doing great. Everyone was discussing the new teacher at recess. He's so cool. Now we don't have to cram. I think he's kind of weird. The next day, I came to school early. My first class was biology again, and Mr. Collins asked me for help once more. We put microscopes and other devices on the tables. I was trying to flirt with him. I knew he was my teacher, but how could I resist? When the lesson started, Mr. Collins asked me for help again. Roxy, you're gonna be my assistant. Wow. You should have seen the way the other girls glared at me. While the other students were bending over microscopes, I was handing out papers and collecting test tubes. At some point, I accidentally twisted my ankle and fell. The tray with the test tubes fell to the floor and they broke. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's not a big deal. How could I be mad at such a beautiful girl? Come on, I'll help you clean up. Did you hear that? He said it was beautiful! Now, my classmates were looking at me with outright hatred. Sam came up to me at recess. Please be careful. The new teacher is really suspicious. What are you talking about? That's nonsense. I had to stay for remedial math after classes that day because I'd skipped too many lessons. It started to rain heavily as I was leaving the school. As luck would have it, I didn't have an umbrella with me. Mr. Collins suddenly came out of the school. My car's in the parking lot. I could give you a ride. Naturally, I agreed. As we were leaving, I saw Sam nearby. He clenched his fist single-eared at us. Mr. Collins talked about his unusual teaching methods as we drove, and I liked listening to him. Spending time with him was so much more interesting than with my peers. Before going to bed, I found myself thinking about Mr. Collins. I wanted to impress him. The next day, I started reading biology textbooks and watching videos on the subject. I kept volunteering to assist him in class. Gradually, Mr. Collins' lessons became weirder and weirder. One day, he even brought a Venus flytrap to the classroom. It was huge. We had to feed it insects.
It bit me.
Be careful. Use my first aid kit. After that, Mr. Collins brought a terrarium with a giant spider to class. He began to dissect it and showed us how to extract its poison. Then, he suggested we take turns looking at it. One girl had arachnophobia and fainted. The first aid kit and smelling salts had to be used again. Despite all that, everyone liked the lessons so much more than the normal ones. Or rather, almost everyone. Sam was still unhappy. He was even asking Mr. Collins provocative questions during lessons. I guess he wanted to catch him in a lie. But of course, nothing worked. At first, I was only interested in biology because of Mr. Collins. But then, I really came to like the subject. I even missed out on that sale to study at home. Mom was really happy about it. Good girl, you've finally come to your senses. One day, I came up to Mr. Collins. I want to know more. Could you maybe tutor me? Okay. We could meet after school. We started spending a lot of time together. One day, we even had a snack in the cafe near the school. At some point, I saw Sam through the window. He was hiding around the corner and looking at us intently. Was that nerd following me? The next day, I decided I would confront him. What are you trying to achieve? Why are you spying on me? I'm spying on Mr. Collins, not on you. I've already found out something. Soon enough, I'll expose him. I got angry. Leave him alone, okay? It was clear from Sam's face that he wasn't gonna give up that easily. A couple days after that, Mr. Collins brought an X-ray machine to class. Now, you'll see what our lungs look like. Roxy, will you assist me? As usual, I agreed, undressed behind a screen, and came up to the machine. All of my classmates were staring at me, especially Sam. He suddenly jumped up from his seat. This is wrong. You've gone too far. Sam ran out of the classroom. While he was away, Mr. Collins calmly talked about the way our lungs functioned. Soon, Sam came back with the principal in tow. Look what's going on in our lessons. First, there was the Venus flytrap, then spiders, and now this. Mr. Collins, come to my office. After they left, everyone started discussing what had happened. Well, that's it. He'll definitely be fired now. But I didn't think so. I quickly dressed and I ran to the principal's office. I wanted to protect Mr. Collins, but the office was locked. They wouldn't even let me inside. Heck, at recess, I told Sam everything I thought about him. I know you're in love with me. You're just mad because you're jealous. Admit it. Sam blushed and then mumbled something unintelligible. But the troubles didn't end there. I stayed late after school, hoping to talk to Mr. Collins, but he was nowhere to be seen. When I got home, I ran into Sam again. You'll never guess what happened. He talked to my mom. Roxy fell in love with our teacher. That's why she's trying so hard at biology. Roxy, what is the meaning of this? You do realize he's older than you. Why has your principal done nothing about this? It's not like that. Mom didn't listen to a word I said and still called the school. I was beside myself with rage. You're mad at me, but soon you'll realize I'm right. Angry? No, Sam, I hate you. No one knew what to expect the next day. However, when we walked into the classroom, Mr. Collins was there. Hooray! He hadn't been fired after all. I was going to assist him as usual, but he waved me off. Please take your seat. He ignored me the whole lesson. I was upset and I tried to find out why. Something wrong? Are you gonna be fired? Everything's fine. I didn't dare ask him to tutor me again, and I went home in a terrible mood. I was walking down the street when a familiar car suddenly stopped next to me. Let me give you a ride. I was delighted and I got into the car. The principal gave me a warning about you yesterday. Sam is spreading rumors about us, so we should keep our distance where people can see. I will tutor you in my personal laboratory. We went there that day. The laboratory was located on the outskirts of the city. It was on the ground floor of an old building that kind of resembled a bunker. There were a lot of research papers and equipment in it, and I also saw a photo of Mr. Collins standing next to some young people. Judging by their ages, it looked like they were students. Oh, did you work in a college? Mr. Collins kind of stiffened. I worked in a lot of places. He got to teaching me. At some point, I noticed a folder lying on the very edge of the table, and I decided to move it a bit. Don't touch that. I was startled and immediately pulled my hand back. What was wrong with him? A couple hours later, Mr. Collins drove me home. And the next day, Sam came up to me again. Why aren't you listening to me? Why are you still hanging out with Mr. Collins? Are you spying on me again? Look, you're in danger. He's a criminal. People went missing because of him. Don't go to his laboratory anymore, no matter what. Soon, I'll have enough evidence to actually go to the police. I swirled my finger at my temple. It seemed like Sam had completely lost his mind. After the principal's visit, biology lessons became a little less original. Mr. Collins couldn't bring anything like an X-ray machine or a Venus flytrap again. But one day, he asked me to stay after class. I left the samples in the lab. Could you go get them? Yeah, of course. No problem. I arrived at the laboratory and immediately found the right samples. Then, my eyes suddenly fell on the folder that Mr. Collins hadn't let me touch. I wondered what was in it. I hesitated a little, but I finally decided to open it. Inside was a dossier on some students. Wait a minute. Those were the college students from that photo. There was information about their health, age, the condition of their lungs under the photo. The more I read, the more uncomfortable I felt. A girl in one of the photos looked really familiar. I thought about it. Where had I seen her? And then it hit me. Of course! A few weeks ago, a news presenter had spoken about missing students and a professor on TV. Was Mr. Collins the missing professor? But how did he end up in our school? I looked through the folder and I froze. It couldn't be. There was information about me in it. The condition of my lungs was even highlighted with red marker. Had Mr. Collins given me an X-ray on purpose? But why? I felt really scared. I put the folder back in its place and was about to leave. The door was locked. Only Mr. Collins knew I was here. Had he locked me up? All sorts of horrors immediately came to my mind. It seemed Sam had been right. Mr. Collins was a criminal. What was he gonna do with me? And then I realized, where had an ordinary teacher gotten money for a laboratory like this at all? I wanted to call someone, but I realized there was no signal there. I sat down on a chair and put my head in my hands. What a mess. You? I was afraid I wouldn't make it in time. I followed Collins and found out the code on his lock yesterday. That's how I opened the door. Sam, you were right about everything. Look at these photos. Sam flipped through the students' dossiers and looked at the photos. I found out that Collins used to work at a college. Some time ago, he headed off to the mountains with a group of students. After a while, he never came back, and he got a job at our school. But he used a different name. Those students were never found. He had to have done something to them. He's too obsessed with his research. I believed Sam now. We quickly took photos of every document, ran from the laboratory, and contacted the police. Mr. Collins called me several times, but I didn't pick up the phone. The cops studied the photos of the documents and they listened to our story. And soon, Mr. Collins was detained at an airport. That bastard. He'd probably realized we had evidence and wanted to escape. Sam and I had to stay at the station until the evening. I felt so nervous and tired. How could I have been this wrong about someone? As we were leaving, I accidentally bumped into someone. I'm sorry. I looked up and froze. To say that I was shocked would be to say nothing. Standing in front of me was Mr. Collins. But how was this possible? He was supposed to be being interrogated or something. Sam was also stunned and stared at him, dumbfounded. Mr. Collins? No, I'm Mr. Gray. We're twins. Our teacher and a couple of cops suddenly came out on the porch. We finally found out the truth. It turned out that Mr. Collins had a twin brother. He was the professor from the college. They had different surnames because Mr. Gray had argued with their father and then changed it. The brothers were both talented scientists. They were working together on a science project trying to develop a cure for lung diseases. They'd even received a research grant and used that money to help build the laboratory. Mr. Gray had taken a group of students who'd helped him, and they'd gone up into the mountains to study the effects of the medicine in rarefied air. However, they'd gotten unlucky with the weather and had to hide in a cave for a long time. That was when their story had been shown on TV. The group got out, but the bad weather had lasted for a long time, and the air traffic had shut down there. They'd only just come back that day. I wasn't trying to run away. I just went to the airport to meet my brother. But who locked me in the lab then? Nobody, but I'm sorry, that's still my fault. I forgot to tell you to turn off the security system. It worked and the door closed. Sam was even more shocked than I was. After Mr. Collins was released, he apologized. I'm sorry I said nasty things about you. I'm sorry too. I imagined all sorts of horrors when I was trapped. Don't worry about it. What matters is that everyone's okay. Roxy, could I talk to you? As we walked away, Mr. Collins sighed. I noticed the way that you've been looking at me. You know, I often change jobs because of students like you. I look young, and the students fall in love with me, and it creates problems. Please forget about me and take a closer look at your peers. At least at Sam. The guy is head over heels in love with you. I couldn't think of anything to say to that, and I just nodded, confused. Soon, Mr. Collins had to resign after all, and it was all because of my mom. She caused a real scandal, but I kept studying biology on my own. I no longer relied on my looks, and I wanted to become a real scientist. Sam still likes me, but I'm not interested in him, to be honest. I still can't forget Mr. Collins. Have you ever fallen in love with someone that's older than you? What should I do?